Welcome back, and we're finally finished with things that begin with the letter L, and we move on to MaxxVolume. Now this is an interesting processor in many ways. It's actually a very simple processor that features 4 sections, so it does 4 things in one. So first of all, over here we've got the low level compressor, and over here we've got the gate. So to the left of the plugin we're dealing with the low level sounds, and over here we've got the leveler and the compressor, so which is dealing with the high level sounds. So it's nicely laid out, low level stuff on the left, high level stuff on the right. Now let's go through these one by one. First of all, we've got the low level compressor. Now this is something where sometimes I'll come to this plugin just to use this one process and no other processes. And as you can see quickly, each one can be turned on and off by these buttons here. And that's on, that's off. So similarly, that's on and off for that part, that's on and off for that part, and this one here is on and off for that part. So everything's off at the moment. We'll turn on just this section and we'll run over this. Now what this does is the opposite to a standard compressor, as you may understand it. Instead of setting a threshold up top and then basically pushing down from there, this is the opposite. You set a threshold and things below that threshold get pushed up. So this is a great processor for, rather than squashing loud stuff, it pushes up soft stuff. So the end result is kind of the same in that you're shrinking the dynamic range of a performance, but instead of squeezing it from the top, you're pushing up from the bottom. And that's sometimes really, really useful, and it can largely avoid the squashing effect that downward compression can cause. So at the moment, it's set to a threshold of 96, which is way, way low. And it's saying when it crosses that, boost by 15 dB. And that's why you can see this meter here is pushing up. But let's set it to a more realistic threshold. So I'll go to, say, there, and we'll play this track here because it's the softer of these two tracks, and let's see what we've got. So you can see here, there's the action we're getting, that much boost. So if I turn this off, it's softer. And now, so you can tell that we're actually loudinating the track. That's a verb, to loudinate. So we're making the track louder, but we're doing it from underneath. So I'll just sweep this threshold a little bit so you can hear the effects. I'll just leave that at 15 because it's a good hard push. So that's basically what we're used to before we start, and I'll push this up. Now, of course, I can get way too high on that threshold to the point at which I'm sort of ramming it into its top ceiling anyway, and you could hear then the sound was getting quite choked. Let's have another listen. Keep going. But now bypass. And up it comes slowly. So, of course, that's too much, but you're getting that effect, and this can be very useful. Now I know this is the Waves Grand Masters bundle, but in most ways this plugin's really not suitable for kind of classic music mastering as you might be thinking of it. I find this much more useful for other tasks which may or may not fall into the general definition of mastering, but something I've had great luck with this plugin in general with is on DVD commentaries, when you get the director and a couple of actors in to do a recording for a DVD commentary track, and the rest of these settings are really quite useful for that. So that parameter I just showed there, the low level compressor, I've had some success with that on music mastering occasionally, but the rest of these, of course, you can do better with dedicated plugins for music mastering. But let's run over these, and I'll keep using music as the example, but you'll get the idea of what they can be used for. So next up is the gate, and I'll push that up there. Now, as you would expect, you just set a threshold, and below that threshold, the audio is attenuated. So I'll turn that on. I'll turn this one off so we don't get confused. Right, so that's normal. The music's playing through fine. And as soon as I get this above where the music is, right, now you can hear it. Now, if I push it right to the top, you can still hear the music. So this is not a true gate. It's really an expander, a downward expander. Normally a gate would imply that it's a 100% cutoff below that threshold. So in this case, it's just a downward expander having a gating effect. So let's have another listen. So as I've said, not exactly useful for music mastering in this context, but certainly useful for a whole bunch of other kind of post-production duties that you might need to do. Okay, next up now we're dealing with the high level side of things, and this is the leveler. turn that guy off just in case. We'll turn the leveler on. Now what this is basically a very, very slow compressor. It's very, very slow in attack and it's very, very slow in release. So this is more to do with long-term changes. It's not going to tuck in single loud sounds that poke out and things like that. So this is good in my example before of a DVD commentary track where you're just trying to set an overall point for something and you don't mind a few little things being a bit louder, a bit softer, but you're just kind of trying to keep an average. So I'll jump over to the loud track and set an example for this. So what we're going to say now is -10. I'll just make that arbitrary point. I want this leveler to keep things around -10. Now natively they are louder than that, so let's see what it does. Okay, now, so as you can see, things are still bouncing a little bit above that. This is by no means any kind of limiter or insurance policy that's going to protect you from overs. It's just giving you a rough average. So we're saying keep it around -10, and that's what it's doing. If I pull this down to -15 now, it's going to start getting ugly, but it'll work. And down it comes. Now you notice there it actually took a little bit of time. Once I went to -15, it was kind of still creeping over for about a second or more, and then he tucked it down. So it's operating very, very slowly over a very long period. Let's go to -20. Now as soon as I hit play, it's going to fly above that point and gradually then rein it in. There it goes. Now I'm hitting it way too hard for that sort of material. So if I'm more conservative, let's put it back to -15. And then we'll jump back to this one, which is around that level. There we go. And it just kind of tucks it in nicely. Now it only works on material that's above the threshold. It's not going to bring up softer stuff to that threshold. And so to prove that, I'll just push this up really quite high. And this second track is very soft. And there you can see. So it'll just be the same if I bypass it. So it's having no effect there. It only has an effect on things that go above that threshold. So there we go. We can pull that down. So that's the leveler. Turn it off. And now we've got the compressor. Now this is a one-stop foolproof kind of compressor. So if you need detailed compression where you want control over all your parameters, this is not the guy to go for. This is more your overall just one-stop shop, good sounding compressor, but with only one control, and that is threshold. As you pull the threshold down, there's an auto makeup gain. So look what happens when I do this. I'm pulling it down. Now you can see here we're starting to get gain reduction already, and the sound is slowly rising in level against that gain reduction. It's still going to increase in loudness as it becomes more dense. Now you can see I'm smashing it, and of course it has now risen in volume a fair bit. I'll bypass. So it's making up the gain as it goes along. So I'm now boosting the track by 14.6 dB rather than just compressing it by a threshold of 14.6. Now finally, this gain here is just the output gain of the whole plugin. So let's set that, for instance, to -10. And no matter how loud the track is, we're not going to go above -10. Now it's not limiting to -10, it's just taking the output of the plugin to -10. So I can keep getting louder and louder there, and we're held down. Now the only other control on here is this soft button here, the opposite of which is loud. So soft and loud. Now this affects the automatic release, which is the same arc system that we've discussed previously, and it affects the arc controls on this downward compressor. So when it's in its loud control, it's a lot more aggressive, and we can have a quick test of that just by smashing this fella a bit hard. So it's on soft at the moment, and have a listen to the effect. Now I'll switch to loud and do the same thing. So it's a lot more smacky. Now look, we'll change it on the fly. You can hear all the edges kind of round off now when it's in soft. Now we'll go back to loud. So it's a lot harder kind of sound. And for this sort of music, I certainly prefer that. But again, I wouldn't generally be using this compressor to compress music like this. But this plugin really just excels as a one-stop dynamics shop, and it's fantastic for post-production-y type things, as I said, or like dialogue things that might have music coming and going, and other duties like that. So that's MaxxVolume. Next up, we're going to talk about Center, which is a terrific little plug for doing some magic tricks, so I'll see you there.